Hey all, Ed here from Persona, and this is Personally, our community podcast. And today I'm talking to Bryan Petro. Bryan is the Chief Operating Officer at GetMyBoat, the world's largest boat rental and charter marketplace with over 150,000 boats and 9,000 plus locations in 184 countries. He was the first employee at GetMyBoat in the product management and operations, and having managed the company's explosive growth into a globally distributed company across 8 countries. That's crazy. So, without further ado, let's talk to Bryan. Bryan, thank you so much for your time. Great to have you here. How are you?
Ed, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Hopefully all is well on your side.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, I guess we can get started. And as I was doing research on Get My Boat, I got super curious to hear more about the foundation. Like, how did it all start? Because you were, I believe, the very first employee. And I would say you're almost like a founder because you probably had to think about a lot of different things. Even now, as a COO, you probably touch every single area. But can you tell me a little bit about the beginning of all of it? Like, how did this get started? How did you get involved in Get My Boat and all?
Yeah, I'd love to. And, thanks for the intro there. And yeah, I just want to be sure we get that distinction out of the way that I am not the founder or co-founder. I was the first employee, but was hired on directly by our two co-founders, Sasha Mornell and Ralph Pilato. They took me under their wing from day one to really take Get My Boat from idea to where it is today. So let me set the stage for you about this. Get My Boat was started back in 2012, which thinking in startup years is an eternity, right?
It's like dog years, like 7 years for each year.
It is. Yeah, I had a baby face, no gray hair at the time. All joking aside, the actual concept for Get My Boat was developed by Sasha and Raph 10 years before that. So the inception took a while to take place because, Raph is an avid boater, has owned many boats, actually has a race team that some of our members race on. And him and Sasha were business partners for some time now. They were looking to get into something different than the company they were currently running and had this idea around boats, right? Which is, if you go to any marina, let me ask you this. I'll pose a question to you, interactive. If you were to go to a marina, what would you see?
Well, I see a lot of boats, but I have no idea what to do with any of them.
Yeah, so you probably see one of two things. The first one, you're right. You see a lot of boats. You see a lot of boats just sitting there. You probably see very few people at the marina, and you can see most of those boats not moving, right?
Yes.
So that's the experience most people have. Some marinas, you actually won't see very many boats. You'll just see empty slips, no one around. So Raph and Sasha saw this as a massive opportunity, which is these boats are not being used, and there's an overwhelming amount of demand for people that want to get out. They want to experience the water. So why isn't there a service that does this? So, that was closer to the 2000 period and 2000s. So it wasn't really until the emergence of the sharing economy that this concept was ripe to pick and to fruit. So, there were companies like Airbnb, Uber, Turo, which was relay rides at the time, but really more so Uber and Airbnb really paving the way for this whole new sharing economy concept, which if you look back at it, it really is a misnomer. It's not really about sharing. It's about unlocking unused assets that are expensive. In most cases, they depreciate greatly and, they're used very little. So looking at boats, that fits into all of these categories, even more so than I think the players that were really pioneers in the space. You add in one more layer to this, which is access, right? How do you access this? I mean, back then there was Craigslist. You could go there for finding a place to stay on somebody's couch, rentals. Airbnb used that as a way to kind of kickstart their journey. But for boats, there really wasn't any way to get out. So it's really taking this concept, using a little bit of what these other folks have built in terms of an idea, and more so an idea from acceptance from a consumer standpoint to kickstart Get My Boat back in 2012. So where did I come into all of this? Taking a step back, back when I was in college, actually, I was a big believer in getting rid of overconsumption, overproduction, mass producing of goods. It just made sense to me. Seeing where I am today, it makes a lot of sense, right? I was renting out my car just to friends and folks that were in from other countries in college that needed a car. I was hardly using it. So make a few extra bucks. When I go back home for college, I would sublet my apartment. So I don't know, this just makes sense to me. In boating, it's always something I've never owned a boat. I actually never planned to own a boat, but I love being out on the water. I couldn't afford a boat in college and even as I entered my career. So finding how to get out on the water is impossible, right? I'm going to ask another question to you.
Go ahead.
If you wanted to go back in 2010, if you wanted to go rent a boat, or let's just say, not even rent it, if you wanted to go snorkeling, what would you do? How would you find it?
Oh, God. Probably look for a travel agency and see if they had like an extra package for snorkeling or something like that.
That's great. That's I think a really great answer. Most folks would say, I'm going to call the marina. Good luck with that, because I've called marinas. No one's picking up your phone. Back in 2010, yes, Google has paved the way for aggregating information, but the marine industry wasn't online back then. So if you're on vacation somewhere, your best chance of getting out was to talk to the concierge desk. You have one option, and it's only the option that they partnered with at one price, and you really have no idea what you're getting. So I knew this frustration firsthand. Almost every time I go on vacation, I'm on the water. So when I found out what Raf and Sasha wanted to do, I actually didn't need any time to think about it. It made sense, and I knew it was going to be a big success. So that's where I came in to the picture, was a culmination of understanding, seeing where the market's going at the perfect time. I can't tell you how timing is everything in business. And I think that's something that can't be overlooked here. These guys timed it perfectly. And when they wanted to kickstart this idea, and I was brought on to take it from there.
That's awesome. And you're so right. I think one of the other answers I would give is also, you see someone on that like nice yacht or like a nice boat, and like, how did they get there? And then you zoom in with your phone and you look at the brand of that boat and you call that number, and that's just the manufacturer. That's nothing really to do with the actual access to it. So this makes a lot of sense, and I love that. But I would assume that doing such thing slightly different from what Airbnb is doing with homes and Uber for cars. For the boat industry, this must be insane. Like, must be a lot of regulations. It must be really hard. Even like the rules of the sea are different. So I'd imagine you had a lot of challenges. Not like what you said, like you were the first employee there, so you probably faced very similar challenges that founders would have found at that point. Can you share some of them that you had, like the early stages and getting this ideation of GetMyBoat into becoming something that's usable for regular people out there?
Yes. Look, there are enormous amount of challenges with every startup when you launch and when you come up with the idea and the concept. And you take that and you multiply it by 2 or 3 for a marketplace. We have the supply side, which is one customer. You also have the demand side, which is another customer. And then you have what we say is a third customer, and that's internal organization that we have to provide tooling to support the marketplace. So there are exponential challenges that you face just with the marketplace in general. Now, in terms of boating, yes, it is very different than any other players out there. At that time, if you were in venture capital or reading tech news, you'd probably see the Uber for X, the Airbnb for X, and everybody wanted to spin up a company that basically was, a white label version of that. Well, we had a very similar concept that, yes, we wanted to better utilize these boats and assets that weren't being used. However, it's a very different beast than anybody else. And let's go through some of the reasons why. You talked about regulation. That actually was not a big issue for us for a few reasons. The first being regulation back in 2012 was not standardized. And you're going to notice this theme here with the marine space, with boating, with rental companies, that there was no standardization. Now, I'm not talking about standardization across countries because that didn't exist and still is very different. I'm talking about within states, within the US, regulations were very different for what you needed to either license, captain a boat, depending on the body of water. And that has evolved over the lifetime of our business. But back then, it wasn't really a challenge that we had to address. And secondly, I'll say it wasn't a challenge because when you hear another term that has been coined in the sharing economy space is peer-to-peer, we initially launched with this concept that it's going to be peer-to-peer. But as we started to better understand the industry and started developing our product, we realized that's the long tail. That's not the low-hanging fruit. This market is so fragmented that existing rental operators, charter brokers that have been in this business for ages are in desperate need of technology. And so they're already abiding by regulations, proper licensing, insurance, all of that. But there's a massive fragmentation. So that's actually the beachhead that we went after when we launched the company was, okay, there's an existing book of business here that's massive. The marine industry is about 10 years behind on technology. So I mentioned, Google was around back in 2012, but you couldn't find anything because rental companies weren't using websites. And if they were very immature and they were amateur. They didn't have standardized practices in customer support or sales. They were very used to this mentality of I'm going to get my business from walk up, which we already talked about, what that looks like going to a marina or looking at a marina, from concierge desk or other channels. So going direct to consumer just was not part of their business. So they didn't have to worry about technology. So we saw this as a huge opportunity. But with that, it's a huge challenge because there's no existing software. There's no existing standard for how the industry operates, which we're not even going to begin to discuss. There was a huge mismatch in demand in what they wanted to supply. So when we looked at the market, in fact, consumers actually just want to go out for a few hours. For the most part, they want a captain. This isn't a Turo or an Airbnb scenario where you just show up and you take control over this thing, whether it be a car or their property, and use it. It was no, we want to be guided on a tour for a very small amount of time that is bite size, right, on demand. But the market had been groomed over the years to offer up week-long charters where you're the captain. You assume all of the risk and only operated on a week-long basis where you check in one day, check out on the other. So there's this massive mismatch, which is the opportunity we saw. We said, okay, this is a very small piece of the pie that they're trying to account for. But if we can introduce them to this much larger demographic, which is basically endless, everything in between is opportunity. But that was a big challenge that we set off to tackle right up front. When we talk about standardization, because of that mismatch and want an hour, a day, a week, there was no pricing transparency. There's no pricing standards, duration standard. We have to kind of handhold the industry to get to a place, get them to understand that there's opportunity to do smaller bookings at shorter scale, which you can do a lot more volume of rather than just one a week. So you layer that into our technology solution, it really helps folks that maybe weren't good at technology, marketing, sales, customer service, accounting, kind of have an all-in-one tool set to build, grow, and scale their business.
That's crazy. I think we can deep dive on this. Like, we could stay hours talking about this because as you're talking and sharing like the challenges. I'm even thinking as someone who is not so familiar with the marine world. If you rent a car, you know the rules of the road. You know where you can park. You know where you should or should not drive. You know what to do. You know the rules because you were educated on this, right? You have a driver's license. Should learn. You should to learn, the rules of the road and how to behave on the road. When you talk about the sea, there's just so much more around. What can I do? What cannot do? And on top of that, to your point, and like the education around the industry itself of what's the pricing model here? How do we break this down? How do we make this at some point standardized so that people know there's some expectation that's being set, both on the business to business side, but also on the end, the consumer, on the end user. So it's insane. I mean, I can only imagine that this was huge, but also, as to your point, you were figuring this out ahead of time. This probably set you guys apart, right? This probably made you become, in years, to your point of the marine industry being behind, but from the learnings from the, let's say, the tech industry, and like on the terrains, that the other areas that we touch, you probably knew, things that could be applied to the marine world. So can you share a little bit about, what's now making or what has been made GetMyBoat, be ahead, be unique in what you offer, and being essentially like, okay, we are going to own this market. We're going to bring this to the next level. We're going to standardize and bring this to the next level. What's being unique to what you guys are offering now?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because when you look at what other folks have done and you kind of take this marketplace model, you take this concept of Uber for X, Airbnb for X, and say, okay, can I just carbon copy this over to another industry? And it's very easy to fall into that trap. But, what we had done in the early days, and it's something we continue to do even now, 12 years later, 11 years later, is to innovate. And how do you innovate? Well, you do that by truly understanding what market you're serving. What are the challenges that you're going to face? What are the challenges they're facing? Listening to not only your customer, but listening to both customers, which are, for us, customers being people that are renting or hiring out these captains and boats, and then the other customer, the boat owners, rental companies, charter operators, and what their needs are, and then deciphering what they're really saying, right? So it's a true understanding of the market. And that's something that we did from day one. We kind of put things in place in kind of a very waterfall fashion of where we need to start, where we need to be, a few years from now, where we need to be 10 years from now, so on and so forth, which is something I think a lot of startups and especially marketplaces fall victim to, which is just trying to copy rather than innovate. And that's something that I think truly comes from the top, and it comes from planning, right? So understanding the market, understanding how big, what's the total addressable market? What are the unit economics of your marketplace? What is a customer worth? How long are they going to be using your service? And then making sure that it's valuable for everybody involved. So when you kind of look at it from this lens, it helps you to take a step back and create solutions that truly offer value. And you can see this in our space where over the course of our life here now, as we are in our 11th, 12th year, we've seen so many kind of startups just try to copy and paste an Airbnb, an Uber, even copy and paste what you see on GetMyBoat to try to spin up competition. And if you're not leading the way, you're always following. And you're not really providing value. You're playing catch up, essentially.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for us, right? But we invested heavily from day one into product, into our engineering, our design team to truly build something innovative. As I mentioned, the marine space, they're behind times about 10 years. So we really need to fast track. We're not talking just tech, mobile. You're not talking about doing business from your phone. That was out of the question in 2012. So we thought, from our perspective, right, you have two customers, the demand side, a renter, a customer, you have the owner side. Well, if we focus on building tools for the owners, we focus on our supply, we build the best tooling that we can to satisfy their needs, to help them grow their business, right? They're in the business to make money. Then the demand's there. We'll go after that once we kind of have the tooling in place, and that's what we did. So we have built pretty sophisticated tooling for our messaging. We have an whole inbox real-time communication platform that helps owners at scale interact with hundreds of customers a day, thousands a week if they need be, if they have that demand coming in, and really take any of the aspects of running their business that they shouldn't be doing and they're not great at, it's not a core competency, and building that into our product. It's already complicated enough to worry about your regulations, right? Your licensing, having to get insurance for your business, all of your boats. There's a ton of maintenance needed on boats, hiring your captains, vetting them, complying with your marina and all of that. That's something that these companies should focus on. They shouldn't be focused on how are they going to drive customers? What are they going to do as their next advertising campaign? How am I going to process payments? Oh, and by the way, we'll touch on it. How do I handle fraud? Because in 2012, credit card fraud really started to pick up with the proliferation of marketplaces. So how do I do that? How do I actually just manage chargebacks in general when customers aren't happy? Okay, now you have to have a whole accounting team to kind of process this and mitigate against losses. We built in tooling all to encapsulate this at scale. So if somebody really wants to start a business today, you do everything that you need to do to start that business, and we'll provide you with the toolings to run everything else. And that's where we fit in. And then layer into that, we send almost an overwhelming amount of customers to our supply. So there's value in the software, and there's value in that we'll send you customers to keep your business running.
This is so smart because by the fact that you're helping your partners grow, you grow with them. But not only that, I think it become like a necessary tool / intelligence that they will constantly tap into. So you all grow together. It's super smart. I love that. And you're right. This makes it so different to someone just trying to copycat like a tech or some piece of information, but not thinking about the ecosystem and growing together as partners. This is really smart. And you touched on something that obviously resonates a lot to what we offer at Persona, which is the trust, safety, avoiding scam and all of that. I would imagine that, as you said, it was bigger before. And as you were evolving, not only with your tech, but also understanding, okay, where does this come from? How can we prevent this? You probably thought, okay, how can we solve this, right? We want to reduce fraud to close to zero, if not at zero at this point, but you need tooling, you need a lot of things to be in place, processes and whatnot. How did you start thinking about it, and what were things you then implemented to mitigate the fraud?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is something that's front and center for all marketplaces and something that everybody needs to consider, whether you're starting, whether you're growing, any time in the life cycle of a marketplace, you have to think about fraud and trust. I think they do go hand in hand here. And it's something that we approached in two different ways. And I guess we should maybe start with the easier of the two, because we have two customers that we're addressing here. And the first one being our renters, the folks that are booking boats and trips through us. They want to trust that they're going to get a quality product, they're going to have an amazing experience, that everything's going to live up to the standards that was advertised, and ultimately, see value in what they paid for. So the way to do that is to make sure we have quality supply. We're building a relationship with these companies to make sure that they're offering this experience. And I think that's part of our technology that we built in. We have an account management team that vets and processes the supply side through them so that we can deliver on those promises to our customers. Now, the hard part has to do with our supply side, right? The trust side of that is, are you going to pay me for the services that I'm rendering? And let me tell you, talk about challenges. This was a big hurdle in the early days because the industry was not used to this. It was in a kind of pay before you go out, right? It was a walk-up customer. They're going to pay you before you go out on the boat with them. If it was, let's even say the week-long charter from the Caribbean, Mediterranean, well, you're wiring funds. Those funds are gone. They're going over to that company, and they're not even going to entertain you until they have the funds in the bank, which unfortunately breeds all types of poor user experience through and through for everybody. With boats, unlike many other travel companies, weather is a big driver in if the trip happens or not. So you can imagine if you wired over a few $1,000s to somebody, there's a huge storm comes through. Well, that week is now gone. And what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Funds are out of your account. It's hard to claw that back. So, we need to, on both sides, need to make sure that funds are secured for our customers, and we're going to pay out the suppliers for services rendered. And companies were coming to us because they're saying, this is great that you're going to take on payment for us, because people are not wanting to send us wire transfers anymore. These are large ticket items. Even on the per hour basis, you might be spending on average over $1,000. And that's meaningful to a company, even a small business, that if you get a chargeback, if you get hit with fraud, you're now out $1,000. And you add that up, once fraudsters realize there's a way in, that hurts their company. So it was great because they said, okay, you're going to take this risk on for us. You're going to solve it. We're just going to show up and we're going to do our job, make sure they're happy on the water. And you're going to put in some fraud tooling in place to make sure that you're not letting people get through that are just going to charge us back, or it's going to be fraud. And so that we know through GetMyBoat, if we process a booking through us, you're getting paid. If we happen to fall down on the fraud side of things, then we eat the costs. We don't make our owners incur that, because we're a technology company. That's something we should handle. And that's something that we had to put in place, right? So that's where persona comes into play. And I'll say another hurdle from starting a marketplace was ID verification and fraud tooling. We've been with many providers. Some we switched just because of their technology solution. In the early days of ID verification, kind of a lot of the tooling behind the scenes, if something was innovative, they were getting taken out by either another player or another startup wanting to buy their technology. So we went through a few iterations of early fraud tooling just because of that fact, that led us to where we are today, to kind of have a very customized solution with many different partners to help us get what we believe is a really great solution for our needs. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And I get back to my point on being a partner to your customers, and the customers meaning the businesses, because if you help them, if you prevent fraud, if you give them insurance, they're like, okay, let's do it. There's something else here. I would imagine that, to your point, and part of the challenges is even like not necessarily just on the tech side, but it could be even like on the mindset of them not wanting to shift the way they do business to what the modern way would be, or like a new version of doing that business. Not going to say if it's necessarily just modern, but just differently from what they were doing before. Could be a challenge on its own, like changing their mindset, changing the industry modus operandi into like something else. So glad to hear that you shared that, and really important, because when we think about, again, the Airbnbs of the world or Ubers, they have their own ways to operate in a business that maybe was different already, where in the boat, marine industry, to your point, they were maybe a decade behind. So again, educating the industry, helping them move forward with that's really good. And the other point on trust and safety, I feel that back then, even for me, before I joined Persona, when you think about, identity verification or doing like KYC, which is like know your business, you would always think about banks and fintechs, and that's it because of compliance. And then the more and more I'm seeing marketplaces using it, because to your point, as a renter or as someone who's offering the service, or a seller, whatever it is that you offer, you want to trust that the person there is who they say they are. It's not a scammer. And I still cannot believe that, we're 2023, early 2024, and still seeing, accounts that are purely vetted on emails that are just, you can create an email address and verify that. that's not a source of truth for verification. So really having something in place that would help you mitigate that and verify true identities feels like a way to go. So I mean, I'm a little bit biased towards persona, of course, but I feel that this is super important for me as someone who's always looking, and I think a lot of people in the gig economy marketplaces, trusting the person on the other side is super important. I think that goes for both ends. This is really important.
Yeah, and it's also something that, when you think about fraud, for our use case here, the typical use case is it's a stolen credit card. Quote unquote customer comes in, wants to book a boat and go out on a joyride, essentially. And those are the folks that we're catching with our fraud check and fraud screening process. But I think it's worth mentioning here as well that there's this whole other side called friendly fraud. And I'm assuming listeners will probably fall into this category as well. And these are real customers. It's their real identity. It's their credit card. They may buy something or have an experience through your service. And then for whatever reason, charge it back after the fact. And having that verification is something that as a business helps us to fight against that and mitigate it. If we're capturing it up front, then they're less likely to actually proceed with a chargeback. And if they do, then at least we have some tooling and evidence to show that, hey, this was a legit charge. They know what they're doing. This is what's classified as friendly fraud, so that we don't have to eat the costs associated with it.
Makes sense. It makes sense. And thinking about where the industry is right now, as you mentioned, it's 12 years, 13, close to 13 of GetMyBoat. There's many years to come, but I would imagine that you as a COO, with all this experience that you gathered from like all these years, plus your previous experience, what are you seeing, where are you going, where GetMyBoat is going? How do you see this becoming like then? What's the next for like the next 10 years, next 5 years to GetMyBoat?
Yeah, it's interesting because our vision and our directive has really remained the same, is that we want to provide access to this amazing experience of being on the water, going boating to everywhere. And, what does that mean for us now? Which is, well, the US is an early adopter in almost most technology. And that's very true in the marine space, is that the US boating industry has adopted more so the kind of hourly, half day to day rentals and charters, much more than most places around the world where you would imagine boating to be really prolific. And so we want to just continue our mission. We want to take boating and make it more accessible to everybody around the globe. And in order to do that, look, we realize we can't really bend the industry to change in this manner overnight. So it's going to be a long-standing effort to show the value in doing this. But also a part of that, we do have to translate our site, and we have to localize it. We truly have to serve a local community all over the world. And so kind of the next 5 to 10 years, that's kind of where I see GetMyBoat going, is we're going to continue to build out world-class product tooling to better support the companies that are using us, but do so at even a much larger global scale, and replicate what we've seen here in the US. Even though we are global, right? It's only in English. You can only satisfy English-speaking customers, but we want a seamless experience through and through. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you're in Japan, whether you're in France, you're in the US, you can take out GetMyBoat, and you're going to have the exact same experience, which is an amazing one. It's a memory that will last you a lifetime going boating through us.
Love that. And I mean, you don't need to give spoilers, but I'm also thinking, because this is great. I mean, international, thinking about, okay, how can GetMyBoat fit into different countries, different, locales, so languages and all. There's probably even, if you think about the sea as your marketplace, this is my opportunity. There's even like different needs of boating, right? For like transportation, for carrying goods. I don't know if you're even the captains, vetting captains, whatnot. Do you see this as also opportunities for GetMyBoat to go beyond tourism or like the recreational boating into more like business related boating?
So yeah, I mean, that's astute observation here, within our industry in particular. But I think what we've seen throughout the course of the last 10 years in all marketplaces, and some have kind of ventured out and kind of veered back in their strategy, which is, we took this approach of a generalized marketplace. So think of Craigslist and all that they're offering, eBay, to some extent Amazon, but there's kind of a verticalization happening in marketplaces. And if the market's large enough, this kind of goes back to thinking about, when you're starting a company, what market are you serving? Is it big enough? You can create so much value within just that vertical alone, depending on where it is in its life cycle. So in terms of boating and the marine space, you nailed it. Look, there's a whole ecosystem of other services, other products that can be offered within the world of what we're doing right now. And that's something that we're interested in. And we believe that we can own. But right now, we're kind of taking the steps, slowly getting the industry comfortable with what we're doing. And then as we kind of get that adoption around the world, GetMyBoat is the dominant player, but we really want to be the undisputed place that people go to when you think of boating. I want to go boating. You're going to pull out GetMyBoat in any country in the world. And within that, there's opportunity up and down kind of the funnel in the ecosystem, whether you're looking at marinas, whether you're looking at catering, looking at captains and that experience, right? We want to make this so frictionless that it is as simple as you pull out an app, like what Uber did for taxis, right? Back in the day. Oh, it was a nightmare. I mean, I'm sure you probably remember this. I was in San Francisco at the time, trying to hail a cab. No way, they're not stopping for you. What would you have to do? You actually had to call, right, to say, hey, I'm going to be at this location. Can you come? And what would happen is, the cabs would pass you by. They wouldn't come pick you up because they got a fare on the way to get you. So now, right, here on the phone, it shows up, you leave, you can tip, you do all that fun stuff, you never exchange money. It's so seamless. It's really magical, right? Same with Amazon Prime, right? You want something, you see it, you buy it, you get it instantly. Depending on where you are, it's same day, which is really magical and an incredible experience. And we want to do the same thing for boating, is that it's so simple, it's easy to access, as long as you're near water, that anybody can do this. And it doesn't have to be this really friction-filled experience to just go boating, live that celebrity lifestyle on a yacht, even if it is just for a few hours, right? And we're seeing it right now, but we want to offer that to everybody because everybody should have that chance to experience it.
It makes so much sense. I love this. If I talk about like the taxis back then, it's not even like one issue of not being immediate, because to your point, yes, we had to call the central and then they would call a driver and then check whether they were nearby or whatever. And then you had to wait. Second, you had to make transactions with cash because there was no like credit card transaction. It was purely a nightmare. Third, the driver knew the route. There was no Google Maps or whatever. So you had no ETA, like no idea where he's going, whether this makes sense or not, if this is the best route or not. So there was a little bit like you had to trust the driver. Where now with technology solving the destination, giving you an ETA, plus giving you assurance that they're going to be there at that time, on top of everything else that you mentioned, like being seamless for payment, being more immediate, feels like if this is the next thing for GetMyBoat, this is insane because I can see myself going on holidays and then you're like, oh, there's a marine here. Maybe I can hop and GetMyBoat and just book a journey for my friends and spend an afternoon boating. And this is incredible because that's the next big thing where I don't have to call an agency, which is a central, to then book me time with God knows who. And then I don't know if this is going to be legit, if it's going to be nice, because I cannot even see the boat. All of this uncertainty can be solved. That's great.
Yeah, and we have some amazing stories. I mean, we have endless amazing stories that happen with GetMyBoat daily. A lot of this being weddings and proposals and birthdays, celebration of life. But then you kind of get these other stories from folks. And one that I had heard personally was I was eating dinner at a marina. I had no intention to go boating, and I wanted to show off in front of my friends. I pulled up your app. I found this really cool yacht, negotiated a price on the spot through your messaging, booked it, and the guy showed up right after dinner at the marina, and we went out. He said, I was, the talk of the town. He felt amazing. So, there is a real-time aspect to this, depending on where you are. And some of the stuff is truly amazing. And to be able to provide that experience is something that, is very rewarding for us.
I love that. We're coming to an end, but I feel like this is an important question, because if you kind of think of Bryan as, a little bit decoupled from GetMyBoat, but about your journey so far, everything that you've been building, what's next for you? What's your personal reflection on everything that's happening and where you see yourself?
Well, I love what I do. I love what we built at GetMyBoat, and we've been successful in what we've done so far, but there's a lot that we want to tackle. We have an amazing team, amazing company. We're building an amazing product, and it feels like even after 11 years, we're still just getting started. So what's next? Look, it's kind of more of the same, coming in every day, helping GetMyBoat grow, helping our customers provide amazing experiences. Look, there's something that's very rewarding with what we do here at GetMyBoat, and that's in two things: the amazing experiences that customers are able to have through us, but then there's the other side, the supply side, and the stories there, right? I kind of talked about all the amazing things that the customers do on these boats, with their weddings, proposals, birthdays, a celebration of life. But let's talk about the owners for a minute here, because we hear stories from them as well. I mean, they're extremely heartwarming, whereby during COVID, people lost their jobs. It was a very dark time for many people. And folks that had boats were turning to us to make a means, to make a living, to survive. And some of those folks left their job, never went back, and started a rental business, something they love, they get to do. They don't have to go to the office, stress, spend more time with their kids, and really enjoy their own life while supporting their families. So we hear stories like that, and there are countless ones, especially during COVID, a way for people to kind of survive. But allowing people to really, find meaning in their lives and do a job that fulfills them, it's something that drives me, something that drives the team, and it's something that I want to continue with. So personally, I want to, see how far we can take this, how big we can grow it, how many people's lives we can impact in this positive way. And, hearing those stories is what drives me every day and what drives the team. So we're creating something really special here. We have the best team, I think, that can be had for a tech company. And the stuff that we're building, the team's building, is truly amazing. And I think you're going to see, for those that want to follow, you're going to see some pretty amazing things coming out here in the near future.
That's great. That's great. I love hearing that. And personally, I mean, don't know you much, but from everything you're sharing, I just feel like we need more people that think like you are thinking, because a lot of startups have the founders working really hard and thinking about the big picture. People join, they'll make like a year or two in that company and then they'll jump into something else. There's a lot of like this hopping between jobs. And I tend to stay a lot of years in companies that I join, because I know that there's a compound effect that's hard to explain if you stay longer in the company and really understand and start to think as a founder. And I feel that you think like that. You think as a founder, you think as someone who's like, I'm trying to solve bigger things than just like a COO role. I'm thinking as, okay, what's next for us? What's next for me? Hearing customer stories. I'm a big advocate for customer stories. So again, I'm a little bit biased there, but we need more people, like more Bryans, more people who think long-term and think about how can I compound my experience with the company, and then over time, we'll see a bigger thing coming out. And this is great. I think, a lot of people are trying to just think of job hopping for whatever, salaries, whatever, but there's more than to that. And I feel like you're much in that kind of same, line of thought that I am. So that's great.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I just put it out there to folks, a job is what you make of it. And if you can foster a culture within a company that allows people to really contribute, It's something that is meaningful for them and helps you when you really have your customers, um, best interests at mind. It is something that helps you produce a product company that is really special and people like to work for. And that's something that we hear from employees. It's something that I live every day. It's something that Sasha and Raph, our founders, have created from day one. So we have something very special here, and um, it's something that I want to see continue to succeed.
That's great. Now, a lot of people have boats here. They're listening to us, I'm sure. Or if not, they would love to hop on one. Where can people find Get My Boat? Where do they sign up? Is there like a website or a special link you want to share?
Go to getmyboat.com. Go check out your own backyard. Go check out that vacation that you want to take. And if you want to escape the cold, if you're in the north, of course, look at Miami, look at South Florida, look at the Caribbean, look at Latin America. Just go out, travel, check out Get My Boat. We're going to have something for you. If you have a boat, you'll see that there's a link there to reach out to our account management team. They'll make sure they get you clued in with everything you need to know in order to be compliant and list with us. And yeah, follow us on social media. And for other founders out there that are in the marketplace arena, if you just want to talk, want to run ideas, if you want to hear things how we've solved for some of the fraud issues that we've come across, you can reach out to me at Bryan at GetMyBoat. Always happy to chat with founders and other marketplace folks out there.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bryan. Thanks for the time, and have a great evening.
Thanks, Ed. Good talking with you.
And if you like this podcast, make sure that you share this with people that you know, people from the industry. If you'd like to be featured, maybe you want to be a guest here in the podcast, let me know. Let's talk. Let's see if there's something between us here that makes sense. And I'd love to have you as a guest. If you want to be part of our startup program, you know where to join us. WePersona.com/startups. Thank you.